Hey, g'day, welcome back to Next Level Oz. One of the things that some of you have been asking for, and we get some regular questions about, is the Defender. So we're going to do the long-awaited review of the Defender. So I'm going to review it as we've found it as a tow car. So it's a long video. I'm sorry these things are necessarily long. I want to be reasonably thorough. In this episode, I'll cover the car, what we've changed and modified, and how we've found those sorts of things, what we like about the car. But also there's a significant issue that we've had to deal with the car, and you'll see that at the end, and I wanted to explain that thoroughly. So hope you enjoy the review. Please don't forget to like, subscribe. Remember, if we make any ad revenue, it goes to charity. If you've got any questions or comments about anything I do or don't cover, yeah, just please add them in the comments. Yeah, we love those comments. So let's get into it. I should mention that you'll see in the background, we're actually, very rarely for us these days, we're actually in a caravan park. It's a Land Rover Defender D300 diesel, 2021 model, so it's the new Defender range, 6-cylinder diesel, 7-seater, and I'll just sort of show you quickly that we've got just the 10-inch screen. Some people have been optioning for 11-inch screen. This has been perfectly good. So this is sort of the main screen. It's actually quite functional. It gives us a range of options. It's a very good camera visibility, and when we're towing, it probably gives us as good a visibility around the car and down the side of the van as the towing mirrors are, even though I use the side mirrors mostly. I actually have the HEMA. We've been in and out of a few locations that Google wouldn't cover. I normally have my phone hooked on the mount over there. We've also got the Safety Day tyre pressure management system. It's been brilliant. We knew that we were going to be getting grubby, so we've got the neoprene seat covers just to try and protect things. The other thing you'll notice about the Defender, no carpet, which has been brilliant because we do get dirty. We're in and out of different locations, and it's actually one of the things we really liked about the car as soon as we looked at it. I mean, it drives and feels a bit like a luxury car, but it's got some of those tips to the more rudimentary. So with the Red Arc Tow Pro down there, it's not the most ideal location for it, but that's where there was a blank. I'll cover off on the UHF. It's been invaluable. We really ummed and ahed as to whether we would have UHF. If you're going to be towing and going to be doing the lap, and you're going to be on some of these remote roads, then I just think that you're crazy not to have UHF and have fixed UHF. And this is the GME 330. I mean, the additional functions of the 370 just weren't likely to use, and it's smaller and lighter and easier to tuck away. So we got the 330. We love the deep wells here in the front. It's pretty good. We have big Tupperware bottles that sit neatly in there. Some people have these trays that they put in there as well as some aftermarket stuff. We didn't want to do that. The obligatory cup holders as well. The map shelf, which is normally full of Paula's junk, just don't know how she manages to cram so much of what she does in there. I've cleaned it out for the video, folks. Good pockets in the side of the car. Yeah, so we went for the dual camera on our van at the rear. Again, I think it's fantastic, both long view and short view. And the Safety Dave just fits on this. This is the clear sight rear vision in the Defender, and that's actually not a mirror, right? As you can see, right, it's a camera. Right, so in the rear, now I'll cover the weights, but the car does, like all cars, it has a weight limitation. Very, very good general payload, very good general capacity, but like all cars, the rear axle is something you have to manage. When we did the weights, we were 50 kilograms over. When I say only 50 kilograms, because we were able to manage that quite well, but it did actually change some choices that we've made. But you can see crash pods, in the back, we try to keep a range of things with us at all times which are duplicated from the van, just so we don't have to move some bits and pieces for day trips or for overnighters. Some of the tools are in the rear, but we wanted to carry a fridge. So we've actually moved the toolkit and the jacks and those sorts of things. They're wedged in the seat, and my little tool roll. I wanted to carry recovery gear as well, so that all that was going to add weight, right? So that meant that we had to make some choices, and that's why we weighed, right? So we weren't worried about it. So not only did we have to lose the 50 kilograms by moving some gear out of the car, but it actually made us make some reasonably fundamental changes. So we couldn't have a dual battery system. I would have loved to have had a dual battery system in the car, but they're all coming in at sort of, low 20s and higher kilogram. So we've got the EB55 portable battery, and it is sufficient. As you can see, we had the Auto Sparky just wire in, so hardwire some connections for us with the fittings for the EB55. Overall, it's been very good, except I hate these connectors. They just do not stay in, and that's actually why we've got this bit of a dodgy with the Oki strap, just to try and hold those bits and pieces in. So it acts a bit like a dual battery system. The cable you can see there, that's for a red Anderson that we've actually also had installed. Okay, so in the back, as you can see, this is not a restraint. This is just a packing, just to keep things relatively neat. A few bits and pieces in the front runner box, including another air compressor in there, separate, so that again, when we were away from the van, and a few other bits and pieces, just a couple of litres of oil and all those sorts of things. And as you can see, the Evercool fridge. This fridge is very light. It's only 17 kilograms. So another vehicle first aid kit. Sometimes I have the snake bite kit there. The snake bite kit's in my day pack at the moment. Drop down table. This is one from New Defender Modifications. It's been good, really easy to fit. I'm not going to tell you which one to like the most, but the only thing I'd say to you is actually make sure that they are ones that don't require any other modifications. They can actually fit essentially into the screw holes for the Defender. Just one thing we did do is we've temporarily removed the third row seats, but they added nearly 50 kilograms in weight. We'll refit those when we get back, and that's just to manage the weight. Right, outside. The first thing you'll notice is that we've fitted a bar. You can only get 2 bars currently in Australia for the Defender. So you get the OEM, the Land Rover bar, or this one's from Rhino 4x4. Right, so the first thing you'll actually notice is no higher hoops, so it gives you excellent low down coverage. And one of the things with this car, if you have a look, there's these radiator intercoolers. I think there are extra radiators, and they're down low. And one of the things which worried us as we were travelling around is, sure, yep, if something hits you high, like a roo or anything like that, then it's going to do some damage, and it would be nice to have some higher protection. But if you hit a wombat or something low, and we did hit a kangaroo in the Flinders Ranges, regrettably, and so the bar saved us from any damage whatsoever. So it didn't come up, it didn't go over. So we think we've chosen well, and the difference between this bar and the Land Rover bar has hoops that protect some of these areas and some better protection across the front of this radiator, but nothing down here, which is just curious. Until somebody brings another bar out, at the moment you've got 2 imperfect choices. So we went for the Defender 4x4 bar. Now, I'm not going to go into it. That was a bit of a drama. So we did have problems getting it delivered, getting it fitted, and there was an issue that this light mount bar, all right, didn't fit properly. In the end, like we had to move on after it got fitted, and we were in a different state, different capital city. So the guys knew I wasn't happy, and in fairness, they weren't happy either. It was not a good situation that they had a product out there that wasn't even to their satisfaction, and they discovered in the process of my bar that they actually had a number that had this same fault, so it was a manufacturing problem. Now, okay, here's the good news. The good news is that even though it was a lot of mucking around when we were in South Australia, I had to travel back and forth to Adelaide a couple of times. They referred us to a fitter called Fit My 4-Wheel Drive. They were terrific. They were absolutely fantastic. They were busy, but they fitted us in, and they modified that light bar by grinding it, put the seals in, refitted it all, and that took sort of a couple of days back and forth at different times. And Rhino 4x4 agreed with me that that was a good interim solution. We've got this refitted, and Rhino 4x4 are going to replace this with a fully to spec light mount bar when we get back to Brisbane at the end of our lap, and that's all been agreed. So credit where credit's due, they've actually worked to resolve it, and so you've got to give some thumbs up. I was of two minds. We were of two minds as to whether we'd get the winch, but we do travel by ourselves a fair bit, and we're going to be going into some remote locations. We are going to do the Cape at the later part of the trip. So in the end, we decided to put the winch on, and we also had a light bar put in as well, and they relocated the cameras, so there's been no change to any of the sensors or cameras. Tough Ant bonnet mount. Guys at Tough Ant have been absolutely fantastic, and that's actually quite a nifty little solution. And the Comex guys who fitted our UHF in Brisbane, thumbs up to the Comex guys in Brisbane. They were quite impressed by that Tough Ant bar. It was actually a slightly more solid and hardy bonnet mount than they were used to. The other things that we've modified, the wheels, okay? So the wheels that come with the Defender are 20, well, with this model we're 20 inch or 19 inch. If you're ordering one of these cars, don't go for the 19 inch. Seriously guys, the 19 inch, getting tyres for 19 inch is just terrible. You're actually better off with 20 inch, even though they are bigger, because you've got a better tyre size. The car is exceptionally capable in most terrains, even with the OEM tyres, which aren't that great, right? They're largely an on-road tyre. They call them all terrain, but they're largely an on-road. But we've taken those tyres onto Tiwa Beach and others, but we wanted to change because of the trip to something that had a higher profile rubber. So we went to 18 inch aftermarket, and we've gone for the Maxi Razor AT all-terrain. This is the 811 tyre, so a little bit more aggressive all-terrain tyre, has been reviewed very, very well on the road. And remember guys, if you're touring, for a touring car, 95% of your trip's going to be on blacktop, no matter what, right? But we wanted a tyre that could take us to some decent places for that other 5 or 10%. They're a light truck tyre, 275 65 R18s. Some people have gone a little bit more aggressive and a little bit wider than that without too much problems. One of the other common questions we get are the tow mirrors. Okay, so the tow mirror options were not great for us when the car first came out. And this company in UK, which is Defender 3D, he's a guy who bought a Defender and he was disappointed with the options, so he just did a design and started 3D printing these brackets, and that means that you can fit a pretty standard tow mirror. This is the Malenko. All right, the other things I fitted mud guards. All right, and this is not a snorkel. It's actually a raised air intake. It's actually designed just to get the air intake above the general line of dust and just protect the air filter a little bit more. I wanted to carry our Max Tracks on the car. So when we first weighed, we had the Land Rover Expedition rack, and if I've got some pictures I'll show that. and we had the max tracks on that, and a couple of other things on that as well. But we're 50 kilograms over. So temporarily we had to take the max tracks off the car when we were towing. When we weren't towing, we had plenty of capacity, but during towing we were taking the max tracks off the car, putting them just on the front toolbox of the Caravan to help manage all that. But in the end, we really wanted to have our awning on the car because we knew we were going to be separated. And if you see the Fraser Island video, you'll see that we were separated completely. We were just operating with a tent and the awning. And the more we've travelled, there are places that you're going to pull over that you just need that extra little bit of shade. Not everywhere has shelter. You don't want to be pulling your caravan awning out. You don't want to be sitting in a hot caravan while you're driving. So just swinging this out was good. So for both overnighters and for day trips and those sorts of things, we wanted to have the awning. That's 19 kilograms or 18 kilograms. The max tracks, I think was about sort of 13 or 14 kilograms for the four of them. The roof rails and the expedition rack, that was adding 35 odd kilograms between the rack and the weight of the third row of seats. And we wanted to carry our max tracks here, our rooftop tent, and things like recovery gear in the car. We had to make some choices. So we took the rack off and replaced them with the Rhino rack aero rails, which are much lighter. We've got a board from Caravan in Brisbane, and as you can see, we've got the awning on there as well, and we took out the third row seats as well to actually make sure that we had the capacity to do all that, and it's been good. You'll see we've got the Stone Stomper Bush Ranger wheelie bin. That was a present from our girls. Was that for Christmas?
Yes, before you even had the car.
Yeah, that's right. We got the wheelie bin before even before we had the car.
It's in the garage for ages.
Yeah, so thanks girls, that's been good. It gets filthy and dusty and mucky and gets used a lot with us. And apologies for doing an inside shot. But unfortunately it started to rain outside, so I've given you the overview of the car. You can look up the specifications, and the specs change. So the towing specifications for the 7-seater diesel Defender has changed in the 23.5 manufacturing year model. It's been reduced by 50 kilograms. So if you've got one on order, go and check that out, talk to your dealer and see if the Australian specification is different, because it's all just going to depend on what the compliance allowances are. What I will do is talk about the things which impact your towing. So first of all, 89 litres diesel fuel capacity. There's not a lot on our lap so far. Big distances have all been towing, some off-road, some in some difficult places, winding, narrow, steep roads. We had some horrendous headwinds at some stages across the Nullarbor Plains and a couple of other things. So our average everything on this lap so far is 17.2 litres per 100 kilometres. So you can get aftermarket extra diesel fuel tanks, extended range fuel tanks. The only thing with that is that's absolutely fantastic if you're not towing. If you are towing, then it's all part of that weight, capacity, payload trade-off. So we just put it in jerry cans on the Caravan, and that just means that you've got to limit the legs according to where you can get fuel. The other limitation is that for the 7-seater it's got a 1900 kilogram rear axle capacity. Now the 5-seater is 1800 kilograms. It was very difficult if you had a tow ball mass of over 300 kilograms towing it with a 5-seater Caravan, particularly if you had any other gear apart from an adult and a full fueler tank and maybe one other adult in the car. So have a look at the Cruise Master overview of this. And I'll say that with some qualifications. So the Cruise Master video took I think a D250, which is the 4-cylinder car, but it doesn't matter in terms of its tow capacity, it was the same. And did a very good review, towing his own Caravan as it happened, the off-road. And they found that they ended up going overweight, even just with 2 adults and nothing else in the car with a full tank of fuel, if they were over 300 kilograms tow ball mass. I think they were at 330. They were using a heavier hitch, a longer hitch. They were probably pretty heavy on the nose. There was a range of other issues that meant that they could have managed the weight. They were only 8 kilograms over. But I think if you're sensible and if safety is always coming first, it's well worth having a look at the Cruise Master video, because it gives you some considerations and tells you that the 5-seater is a stretch if you're going to be towing a van over 3 tonnes. That means that if you want to buy a Defender, and it's a fantastic car overall, okay, and my bottom line conclusion in a second, because there are some problems. If you want to tow with a Defender and tow heavy, you've probably got to go for the 7-seater. So overall, the car drives fantastically. It's stable on the road. It does feel like a luxury car when it's in not a truck, when it's in comfort mode, because it's got multiple sort of driving modes. We've driven it in sand mode, we've driven it in rock mode, we've driven it in water mode, and all of that's fantastic. And if you've seen the ratings for the car head to head with a range of other cars in its class, all of the car reviewers are all giving it the big tick, which is why it won Car of the Year in its class. But is the car all it's cracked up to be? And I've got to be honest, we can only deal with our car. So we've had an issue. Our car, regrettably, and on multiple occasions, reverts and drops back to 2-wheel drive. It's a constant 4-wheel drive vehicle, and it drops back to 2-wheel drive for some reason. Gives you a warning, and I'll show it on the screen. Basically tells you it's gone into 2-wheel drive mode and tells you to drive with caution. Now that's happened to us on gravel road, pretty stable gravel road, on some sand, sometimes even on sealed road, and it's done it when we're towing, and it's done it when we're not towing. And it's happened pretty regularly in our time owning this car. And at first, when we took that to Land Rover, they said, oh, well, we can't replicate the problem, we don't think it's a problem, just keep driving it. And at one stage they tried to do a fix which made the car undrivable, and the car then had to go on a tilt bed back to Land Rover to get fixed up. They decided to do a headquarters directed special software update, so it wasn't one of the standard over-the-air updates that affect all vehicles. So they're obviously trying to modify something, and they fried a pretty critical part in the car, which is familiarly known as the driver assist module. It's got another name. We lost our cameras, we lost some of our sensors. They weren't quite sure of the impact of that on some of the other safety features of the car. And at first they said to us, well, that's okay, you can still drive the car. Well, it's a big 4-wheel drive car which has got blind spots and all those things, which meant we couldn't take it into car parks. You certainly can't take it into caravan parks. You can't do those sorts of things. So it's pretty critical, and it's not what you expect of a $130,000 4-wheel drive car. So it was a pretty serious issue. And regrettably at the time, they then said to us that there was no known replacement for that part globally. Like, sorry, too bad, so sad, we'll just have to wait till we can get a part, and there isn't one available globally. Well, you can imagine we weren't very happy about that, especially when they continued to take orders for the car and they continued to produce the car. So there was a bit of headbutting that went on at that stage, because they were clearly at that moment in breach of their Australian consumer law obligations. So they're a manufacturer, they're an importer, and they were selling cars and taking orders for a car where there was a critical part that they knew that they couldn't replace. So we were unhappy. And keep in mind, we wanted and we preferred this car. So it wasn't as if we said to them, oh, we just want compensation, or we just want a refund, we want to throw our hands up in the air and give up. We sort of said to them, guys, you've actually got an obligation. You've got to fix this car, and we want you to fix this car, and we want this car to work. So I think we were being very fair, but we were being very firm. And I think at first we got the standard Jaguar Land Rover fob off. And I've said to you before, I'm not tribal. I'm not pro-Toyota, anti-Toyota. I'm not pro-Land Rover, anti-Land Rover. And we took a chance on the reputation of Land Rover's service culture. And we had friends who were four-wheel drivers who said, Dave, don't do this, right? We know that it rates well on paper, and you've seen some other reviewers who say it rates well on paper, but it's a Land Rover, and there are reliability issues. But we looked at this car compared to the others, compared to the Land Cruiser 300. At the time, the extortionate prices that people were charging for 200 series cars, even with dubious history. So we liked this car. We actually liked the philosophy of this car. We liked how it drove, and it suited us. So we said to Land Rover, guys, this fob off, right, is not good enough, and we're prepared to take you on. Right? For Jaguar Land Rover, who I think have a terrible service culture, I'm sorry, you just got to call it out. Their reaction, even when they escalated to their customer service centre, or customer relationship centre, their CRC, was go back to the dealer, they'll talk you through it, but just remember they're very busy, so it might take them some time to come back to you. That's actually the response we got, which was appalling, and I said so. Now, how do we resolve it? All right, so first of all, we sat down with the dealer principal, we sat down with the service manager, we said, guys, this is not good enough. Now, they agreed it wasn't good enough. It's not the way they want to sell a car, and in fairness, and I think they realised pretty quickly, we weren't trying to bag the car. We actually wanted the car to work. We weren't looking for compensation. We weren't looking for offsets. We knew there were logistic constraints. We were prepared to work with them, but a situation of producing and selling more cars that had this part in it, but saying that they couldn't find it as a repair part, wasn't good enough. And we just said, no, we just have to share this news with people, because this car's getting all these ratings, and I'm just prepared to tell people, here's a problem that we're having, and this is what Land Rover is saying. Repairs are not a cost centre for a dealer, right? Repair and maintenance is a profit centre. So they want to repair your car, right? Even under warranty, they want to do it because they get the money back from Jaguar Land Rover. So there was no lack of willingness to work from the dealer. There was a bit of argy-bargy at first, but we got there and they were good, right? So credit where credit's due, as I always say. But it was a pretty bad attitude further up. So we actually asked for the contact that we'd been given at the Customer Relations Centre to be changed to somebody who was going to provide the sort of attitude and assistance that you needed. And Jaguar Land Rover came to the party and they changed that customer service officer. And I've got to say that once they realised that we were pretty serious about this and we weren't just going to get fobbed off, they started to help. So before too long, and we'd already had a delay on our lap at this stage, so it wasn't that much after that they then said, look, this part normally comes directly from the manufacturer, and I just said, well, divert one from production. They weren't happy about that as an option, of course, because they just wanted to sell people cars and they didn't necessarily, frankly, want to repair them. But it was a little bit hard for them to argue that they were meeting their Australian consumer law obligations doing that. So before too long, we started to get a better attitude from higher up, and that started to match the attitude that we had from the dealer. And all of a sudden, they then decided that they could get us a part, and that the part was going to get in relatively short time to Land Rover in Solihull. So in the Midlands, in the UK. And at that stage they then sort of said, but that could take up to 5 weeks to transport to Australia. So I said bull to that, and sort of said, well, that's fine, I'll fly to London, I'll drive to the Midlands, I'll pick up the part, can only be a few kilograms, put it in my luggage and bring it back. At that stage they then sort of said, oh, well, we can actually get it here quicker.
and it's on its way. So to cut a long story short, they did actually get the part. There was a delay. It impacted our lap, but they ended up coming to the party, getting to us quicker than they'd originally claimed, and we got through all this nonsense that suggested that you couldn't get a part globally. So they then got it in, the dealer got it, were able to repair the car. Credit where credit's due, they got it in. But here's the thing, they fixed the consequential problem that they'd created, but the car still drops occasionally into two-wheel drive. And I've got to tell you this, so we can reset the car, we can stop it, turn it off, alarm it, which is just this car's version of turn it on, unplug it, turn it back on again. So it's like the IT crowd version car, and it resets itself and it still works. Since we got on the lap, we've gone to the dealer and so say, well, what are the design conditions? Let's work our way through, let's get this thing fixed. But now that we're on the lap, of course, we're away from that dealer and we haven't heard much more. So we'll keep on to them and we'll keep you posted. The car is 95% functional. I mean, it's 95% functional, it's brilliant. But our fear is that we can't be in the middle of the Pentecost River, right? We can't be in a critical spot on the Cape. We can't be towing a caravan in a more difficult location or on sand with the tide coming in, as we were on Fraser Island once, and the car then drop into two-wheel drive at a critical time. That's not what the car is designed or supposed to do. So we thought we'd share that with you. We want the car to work because we think its potential is fantastic. And I'll leave you with this thought. Jaguar Land Rover are changing their branding. And I'm not a tribalist, right? So they can do that. And they're essentially just going to promote the brands, if you like, the marks of Range Rover, Discovery and the Defender. But it's a little bit sad when you see a report that the CEO of Jaguar Land Rover says that there's no brand equity in the name Jaguar Land Rover. The brand equity is in the name of those marks. Yeah, I've got to say, sorry, if you're the CEO of a company that has to admit that your brand on your watch doesn't have brand equity, gee, what are the board doing? But we've stuck with the car, right? We're stuck with the car because we think its potential is brilliant. We think it drives very well. We think off the production line, its capability is better than any of the cars of its class. And most people are very happy with their Defenders, okay? There have been issues. So the 4-cylinder is no longer being produced. A few people had their engines blow up. There's been some recurring issues. So most of these are sort of recall warranty type items that there hasn't been an issue with. So they have had a problem with, and we've had the problem with the bonnet cable stretching or loose, which means you can't pop open your bonnet easily, which is a difficult thing to do when you're trying to maintain a car on the road. The drive belts were loose and squeaking and they've had to replace them. We've had 2 replaced, but since the second one's been replaced, no issue, it's been going like a dream. The car does use a lot of battery power. It's got a lot of computer chips. The Pivi Pro control system does actually arc up, as your proximity key gets there and opens the car to try and get ahead of you before you start, so that everything's operating in time, and it takes a little while to then cycle down after you switch it off, and that all uses a lot of power. So we did have a problem with the battery dying, and again at that stage they replaced the battery under warranty as we'd asked them to do. But since that's been done, it's good. So if you're going to buy this car and you only want to use it as a mall crawler, if you just sort of want to put big shiny wheels on it, just only use it in town and you're only using it for city traffic, I'd say you might want to watch that, because that's probably not sufficient running to keep that battery charged up. So let me summarise. The car tows exceptionally well. And some of the tow assist functions are very good and do actually sort of help you and keep you safe. It's various off-road functionalities are brilliant. So that capability and the potential of the car is exceptional. The fuel economy, towing, again, is better than anything in its class, and that's brilliant as well. Particularly, you know, our experience is the diesel. The car hasn't had the sorts of issues which have been reported with the Land Cruiser 300, with significant oil consumption. And one thing it does do, it does chew through a lot of AdBlue when you're towing. Now, diesel engines will. The service cycles are probably a bit longer than I'd rather, but we did speak to the dealer about that, and they just said follow the conditions-based servicing instructions. So we will. The car is comfortable, and as I say, good to drive. And the negative, I've covered that. You know, the criticism that people make is Jaguar Land Rover reliable? Well, I wasn't too worried about the technology. I don't think the car is any more nor less prone to breaking down in remote areas than the Land Cruiser 300. And frankly, if the Land Cruiser 300, which is the comparable car, let's face it, breaks down in the middle of nowhere, you're not going to be servicing it on the road. You're going to be recovering it, which is the Land Rover model. So I was actually comfortable with that. My issue is Jaguar Land Rover's culture up to supporting the brilliance of this car, and I think that's the $60 million question. We want them to be able to. Otherwise we would have asked them for a refund and we wouldn't have tried to do this. So the success metric for us with this car is that we successfully and safely complete the lap, and Land Rover have resolved this recurring problem of it dropping back into two-wheel drive, and that we managed to use the car through all of those hard conditions. If we can do all of that and we're happy at the end and they've resolved it, then that's the success metric, isn't it? But it'll be a fail metric if Jaguar Land Rover think that the problem's just going to go away, and we'll report it to you, even with our small amount of followers. But there'll be plenty of people who are detractors to the car that I hope we prove them wrong. You know, I hope we get there. So you know, some of my friends think I'm mad, and they know who they are, you know, and they ask me, how's the Landy, right? So I hope that's a fair assessment of the car, and I've probably dwelled on that negative too much, but you've got to be honest in these things, and we're not paid by Land Rover to sell Land Rovers. We're not paid by anybody to sell caravans or to sell their equipment. You know, we're paying for this trip ourselves, and as we've said time and time again, if you like this content, please subscribe, because if we make any ad revenue, it's all going to charity, which means that we can be pretty honest with you, because we don't want to be influencers, we don't want to be content creators, and that's nothing against people who do that for a living. I've got no problem, you know, I'm all for private enterprise, but that's just not what we're doing here. So if you've got any questions about the car, you know, that's a warts and all approach to it. If you've got any questions, please add them. I'll try to answer them. I'll try to answer them as fairly as possible. I'm sorry to the people who absolutely love this car, who will hear nothing bad about it. We want this car to be brilliant. I wouldn't still have it if I didn't want it to be brilliant. But you've got to call these problems out, and I think the problem is Jaguar Land Rover themselves, frankly. Not the car. I think they've got a car, and the question mark for me is, can Jaguar Land Rover live up to this car? That's all I can say.